Keller could never be stopped. She helped the blind and deaf and overcame obstacles. She even stood up for and supported equal rights for women and people of color. Even in the hardest times, she kept going. Helen Keller is a very famous person. You might not know of her, but if you do, you will learn something from this documentary that you didn't know before. I'm going to start with something very basic. Well, when was Helen Keller born? Helen Keller was born on June 27, 1880, in Tuscumbia, Alabama. Well, we can cross that off. But what does Helen Keller's house look like? And how did she become blind and deaf? Was she born with it, or did she get it on later in life? This is Helen Keller's house. It was small but big enough to fit her whole family. When Helen Keller was 19 months old, she was diagnosed with scarlet fever. Her parents soon found out that she was blind and deaf after waving a hand in front of her face and calling her name with no reaction. Helen Keller's parents looked everywhere for a teacher. They finally found one, and her name was Anne Sullivan. Anne Sullivan grew up in a poor family. Her mother died when she was 8 years old, and her father abandoned her and her brother soon after that. She was accepted to Perkins School for the Blind and soon was asked to teach Helen Keller. This is a map of Watertown, Massachusetts. Watertown, Massachusetts is where Perkins School for the Blind is located. As you heard in the last slide, Anne Sullivan went to Perkins School for the Blind. One day, Anne Sullivan decided to take Helen Keller over to the water pump. She put Helen's hand under the running water and spelled out water on her palm. Then a miracle happened. Helen had said the word water. She knew what it was. Soon after that, Helen Keller tried harder and did her best to learn. But it wasn't just her teacher who helped her. It was also her mother and father who helped her with the things that she couldn't do as she grew into a young woman. And now, a little more about Helen Keller's family. This is Helen Keller's family. They supported her in everything she did. You might be wondering, what was and where is Helen Keller's first school? Well, in this next slide, you'll find out. This is the city of Cambridge, Massachusetts. This is where Radcliffe College was located. Radcliffe College was the first college Helen Keller went to. Not only did Helen Keller go to college, but she also wrote her own book. This was Helen Keller's first book. It's an autobiography, and it's called The Story of My Life. Isn't that crazy? I definitely think it is. But she also wrote a couple other books. Enough of books. Now we're going to go on to a couple quotes. Keep your face to the sun and you will never see the shadows. Helen Keller wants us to understand that if you believe, it won't be as hard as you think. The best and most beautiful things in the world cannot be seen or even touched. They must be felt with the heart. This quote lets you know that even the hardest times can be changed into something beautiful. You just need to feel with your heart. Speech is the birthright of every child. It is a deaf child's one fair chance to keep in touch with his fellows. Helen Keller wanted to put it out that she knows how everybody feels, and there's always one fair chance. Optimism is the faith that leads to achievement. Nothing can be done without hope and confidence. This quote shows us that hope and confidence are needed in every hard time. Those quotes helped me understand a little more about achieving goals. Helen Keller also gave some speeches, and in this next clip, you'll be able to see a little bit of that. Helen Keller is giving a speech, and she did this a lot. She was very famous, and people loved to hear more and more about her life. Helen Keller became even more famous as she grew older. People wanted to meet her and take pictures with her. Helen Keller is an amazing person, and now that you know her background, we can get to how she made a difference. Keller made a big difference in other people's lives. She didn't want them to feel the pain she felt, so she tried her hardest to help them. Helen Keller wanted to help people so much that websites were made after her generous example of helping others. For example, Helen Keller Services for the Blind help you achieve what you long to achieve. This can help blind and deaf people. Not only did Helen Keller support people with disabilities, but she also supported people of color and equal rights for women. Helen Keller was raised in southern United States, so like most families, her family had slaves before the Civil War. After Helen realized why it wasn't right, she wanted to make a difference in that too. In a website named Molly Music, it states, "People need to know of Helen as being more than just a person who learned the basics of communication and reading and writing. She should be remembered as a strong and influential person who not only just overcame her obstacles, but exceeded in her life goals. If Helen Keller could accomplish all that she did, even though she had very limiting obstacles, anyone can be capable of making their voice heard." This site lets you know that since Helen Keller accomplished more than she needed, anyone can do anything. Helen Keller spent many speeches and did change the world, and because of that, she got many awards. This is one of Helen Keller's awards. It's a plaque to remember her at Perkins School for the Blind. That's not the only plaque there is. There's also this one that gives a little bit of information about her. Well, those awards were only two of her many awards. And she earned them because she was a very honorable and kind woman. She helped others just like she always wanted, and she did it for a very long time. But there's a time where everybody has to die. Helen Keller died at age 87. She was born 1880, but died at 1968. She was a very wonderful woman and lived her life as she wanted.